Today we're going to make a Halloween wreath using the DECO Mesh Poof and Curl method. Welcome to Stillwater's Wreath Designs. Come on in. Hello, my wreath making friends. How are you today? Come on in. Welcome, welcome. Today we're going to make a super cute Halloween wreath on a Dollar Tree frame with some Dollar Tree supplies. How is everyone today? Friends, I'm going to leave a full supplies and tools list for you below in the description of this video so that you can recreate this beauty if you'd like to do so. If you'd prefer just to purchase this wreath that we're making here today, I'll leave a link for that as well below in the description. So let me show you some of the supplies we'll be using today. This is just a super cute trick-or-treat sign that I picked up from a store called Gabe's. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. It's kind of similar to a TJ Maxx. And we're going to be using 10-inch solid black deco mesh and 10-inch glitter orange deco mesh. We'll be making this on the 14-inch Dollar Tree wire wreath frame. And I also picked up some standard size pipe cleaners or Chanel stems, also from the Dollar Tree. Before we dive in, let's have a little Wreath 101. So if you're new to wreath making, this is what's called a wire wreath frame. You can get them from a variety of different places, but as I mentioned, this guy actually came from the Dollar Tree. And so when you take a look at your frame, it's got a little bit of a bevel to it. As you can see, it's rounded here, and then it's flat on the back, so it can rest nicely on your door. There are 4 wire rings, 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's also 6 crossbars around your wreath frame. And then the distance between each crossbar is what we refer to as a section. And there are 6 sections on this wire frame. The first thing we need to do is prep our wire wreath frame to add in our deco mesh. So if you've not already done so, go ahead and plug in your hot glue gun so that can be heating up. And we're going to grab our pipe cleaners or Chanel stems. You can grab these from Dollar Tree, any crafting store, or Amazon. And you're going to need 18 of the pipe cleaners. I always try to match my pipe cleaners as closely as I can to the colors of my wreath. However, it's not super critical because typically they're nice and tucked away. We're going to add 3 pipe cleaners per section all the way around the wire frame. And so we're going to take our first pipe cleaner and tuck that underneath rings 1 and 2. And we're going to place that right in the middle between these 2 crossbars. And you're just going to wrap that pipe cleaner around rings 1 and 2 and give it a couple of tight twists. Once you do that, point those pipe cleaners in towards the center of your wreath. And now we'll add 2 pipe cleaners around rings 3 and 4, basically centering them each a third of the way through here between these 2 crossbars. So we'll run that underneath rings 3 and 4. We're going to give those a couple of tight twists, like so. And then point those guys outwards. Let's do that one more time. Basically, you're going to want these equally spaced between the crossbars. So I've just run this pipe cleaner underneath rings 3 and 4. I'm giving it a couple of tight twists. And I'm going to poke that guy outwards. So it looks just like this. Let's do one more section together and then we'll speed ahead. So first pipe cleaner is going underneath rings 1 and 2, right in the center between the 2 crossbars. You're going to give that a couple of tight twists and point those guys towards the center of your frame. And the next 2 are going to go around rings 3 and 4, basically centered equally as best as you can between the 2 crossbars. And guys, you'll hear me say a lot, not looking for perfection here. Nobody's going to be measuring. And you can scooch them a little bit if you need to do so. And of course, those outer two pipe cleaners will be pointing away from the center. Excuse the background noise, guys. The neighbor is mowing. All right, now that we've completed the first two sections of our wreath frame, go ahead and repeat the same process, adding 3 pipe cleaners to each section all the way around your frame, and I'll meet you back here. All right, now I've added all of my pipe cleaners into my wreath frame, so you should have a total of 18, 3 per section. So now we're going to flip this guy over, and now what we're going to do is just add a pea-size amount of glue at one of the connecting points where the pipe cleaner meets our wire frame, just to keep those guys from sliding around. I'm going to lay a couple of pieces of old cardboard underneath my wreath frame, just so I don't get any glue on my cutting mat here. And again, so your pipe cleaners attach at 2 spots. You only need to add your pea-size amount at 1. That's just to keep it from sliding. Just like so. And if any of your pipe cleaners shifted while you were moving your frame around, go ahead and scoot them back in place before you add your glue. I'm going to give this just a couple of seconds here to let the glue stop dripping, and then I'm going to set our wreath frame here off to the side so we can work on the next step. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get our sign prepped. Now, because this is a heavier sign, I'm going to actually staple some pipe cleaners to the back of this guy to really ensure a good hold. If you don't yet have a crafter's stapler, they're basically more heavyweight than a desktop office stapler, but far less heavy duty than a garage stapler. And they're great for just stapling down pipe cleaners or floral wire stems into your signs and embellishments to really hold those guys in place. If you don't have one, I will leave a link for you below in the description of this video so that you can snag one and add it to your wreath making toolkit. But in the meantime, just go ahead and cut some scrap ribbon. Lay your pipe cleaner down, add a ton of hot glue, cut about 1 inch to 2 inches piece of ribbon and place it on top of that hot glue. Give it a good 30-second hold and set it off to the side to dry for a good 15 minutes, and that should do the trick. But if you're going to staple, like I am, I'm going to come to this far edge here because the sign isn't quite as wide as my normal signs. And so what I'm going to do is staple it as close to the edge as I can without, there we go, letting that staple poke through on the side, just like so. So it's probably 1/4 of an inch in. And then it looks just like this, guys. And then for some extra measure, I always like to run a little zigzag of hot glue right on top of that stapler, just to make sure that guy's not going to go anywhere. And now we're going to sit this off to the side so that it can be drying while we work on adding the deco mesh into our wreath. So go ahead and grab your wire wreath frame and bring it back to your work area. And you're also going to need a standard size ruler, and you'll want to have a pair of scissors handy. Today we're going to do the poof and curl method as we add our deco mesh in. And we're going to use the black 10-inch deco mesh for the poofs, guys. And so this is just a plain, fairly see-through 10-inch standard black deco mesh. And what I want you to do, as you can see, it likes to curl in on itself. You want it to be curl side down. And you're just going to lay that down in your work area. I've given myself about 18 inches or so of mesh to work with. And we're going to scrunch and gather the mesh into our fingertips to get it anchored down into our wreath frame. So I'm going to take my thumbs and leave them stationary. They're going to hold my deco mesh. And then I'm going to use my 8 fingers to just scrunch and gather the mesh back into our hand like so. So you've got this little tail. Now take that tail and fold that back under and grab a hold of it again. And what that does is tuck away the raw edge of your deco mesh. If you're new to working with deco mesh loves to fray. And so anything we can do as creators to help prevent the fray is always ideal. So keep a hold of that deco mesh. And at this point, our wreath frame has no top or bottom. We're going to start on the outer level at any of these pipe cleaners. So just come to any set of pipe cleaner ties on the lower level or outer level, open them into a wide V. Take that tail of deco mesh and you're going to place that all the way down to the base of that V so that it's laying right on top of your frame. You'll have about an inch tail, and then just take those pipe cleaners and give them a couple of tight twists to anchor that guy down. So once you've got that anchored down, it's time to make our first poof. And we're going to make 10-inch poofs. And so you're going to take your standard ruler, lay it right on top of the ties that we're anchored down to, come out to that 10-inch mark. And again, guys, not looking for perfection here. No one's going to measure your poofs. And then you're going to scrunch and gather your mesh into your hand like so. Keep it pinched between your fingers and come to that very next set of pipe cleaners. Place that pinched area all the way down to the base of the V, like so, and then give that 2 tight twists. And point those guys back outwards. And you've just made your first 10-inch poof. So let's do one more together and then we'll speed ahead. Grab your standard ruler, lay it down at your most recently set of used pipe cleaners, identify that 10-inch mark. Pinch and gather your mesh into your fingers. Hang tight with that. Come to your next set of pipe cleaners and we're just staying on that lower level, guys. Take that pinch of deco mesh and place it all the way down at the base of that B. And give it a couple of tight twists. Go ahead and add your 10-inch poofs all the way around your lower level, and then I'll meet you back here so that we can jump to the upper level. All right, it's time to add our last lower level poof. And so we're going to follow that same method, friends. Just go ahead and place your ruler down on your most recent set of ties. Come out to that 10-inch mark. Scrunch and gather your mesh. And we're going to come to where we added our tail in at the beginning and carefully untwist that pipe cleaner. And then add that last poof right on top of that tail, all the way down to the base, and give it a couple of tight twists. And you've just added your last lower level poof. And so now it's time to jump to the upper level. And so to do that, you're going to take your deco mesh, gather it into your hand, and you're going to pull it cleanly and tautly. There's no poof at this point. And we're going to go up and to the next or closest set of ties. And we're going to come in behind that set of ties, keeping our mesh taut. Just like so. We're going to go all the way at the base of that V of our chenille stems or pipe cleaners and make a couple of tight twists. And now you can see that we've just successfully jumped our mesh from the lower level to the upper level right here. And it's a nice, clean, taut piece of mesh. And now we can go about adding our upper level poofs. We'll follow the same method that we used on the lower level with one exception. Your upper level poofs will only be 8-inch poofs instead of 10. We like those upper level poofs to recede in a little bit on your wreath so that that outer ring really can shine and doesn't get covered up. So we'll lay our ruler onto our set of ties at the upper level. We'll come out 8 inches. We'll scrunch and gather. It's a little bit trickier for the upper level because you have to work around your lower level poofs, but certainly manageable. And just like the lower level, we'll come to that next set of ties, open them up into a wide V, place that deco mesh all the way down to the base of that V, and give it a couple of tight twists. So let's go ahead and add our 8-inch poofs all the way around the upper level of our wreath base, and I'll meet you back here. All right, friends, it's time to add our last upper level poof. So I'm just going to add my ruler on top of my most recent set of ties, identify that 8-inch mark, scrunch and gather, and we're going to come over here to where we jumped our mesh up earlier. And again, carefully untwist those ties. And then lay that mesh right on top of where we jumped up from the lower level, all the way down to the base, and give it a couple of tight twists. Just gonna fluff out that poof here. And we've just added our last upper level poof. And so now it's time to cut off this deco mesh. And so you want to be careful here, friends, that you don't accidentally cut a poof or something that you don't mean to. And so what I do is just gather my mesh here, pull it together cleanly and tautly, and then I put my hand behind it to serve as kind of a guard so I don't accidentally cut something I'm not supposed to. I come up a good inch to 1.5 inches, and then I cut that off. That nice little tail there will keep anything from coming undone, and don't worry, friends, nobody's going to see that. So as you can see, we've begun to get some coverage, but it's still pretty light and airy. So we need to move on to round 2 of the deco mesh process. So go ahead and sit that wreath base off to the side, and you're going to need either your self-healing mat and a rotary cutter, which, by the way, friends, if you're new to wreath making, the rotary cutter is really one of the first things you should add to your wreath making toolkit. It basically is like a mini pizza cutter, and it lets you cut your deco mesh quickly and with nice clean lines. I'll make sure I leave a link for this for you below. If you don't have a rotary cutter and a self-healing mat, no worries, just grab your ruler or tape measure and a good pair of scissors. And now it's time to cut the deco mesh into pieces for our curls. And so remember, we've got 18 sets of pipe cleaner ties on our wreath base. So we're going to need 18 pieces of the black and 18 pieces of the orange. We're going to cut our deco mesh into 10-inch pieces. So you're going to need 18 10-inch pieces of the black and 18 10-inch pieces of the orange, and then I'll meet you back here. Go ahead and bring your wreath base back to our work area here. And I would recommend that you grab a chip clip or a clothespin or something of the sort. These actually came in a 10-pack from the Dollar Tree. And we're going to add 2 curls to every single set of pipe cleaner all throughout our wreath base. So I'm going to scooch that back just a little bit. And let me show you how to make a curl, friends. It's super quick and easy. You're just going to grab a piece of your deco mesh. We'll be adding 1 black and 1 orange curl to every single set of ties. Put that in your work area, and as you can see, it likes to curl in on itself. You'll want to keep that curl side up, and you're basically just going to roll this guy into a cylindrical tube, just like so. And so that middle area is probably 1 inch or so in diameter, and then of course it flares at each end. So once you've made your first curl, grab your clip and just pinch that guy in the middle to hold it in place. And then grab the next color and do the exact same thing. Lay it down in your workstation, curl side up, and roll your piece of mesh into a cylindrical tube, just like so. So now we've made our second curl. We're just going to place 1 curl on top of the other into a sloppy X, and you can come to any set of ties on your work frame here, friends, because you're going to add one orange, and one black to every single set of ties. So you'll just come to any set of ties, place that Deco Mesh Curl X right down to the base of those pipe cleaners and give them a couple of tight twists, just like that. We've just added 2 curls to our first set of pipe cleaner ties. So go ahead and add 2 curls, 1 black and 1 orange, to every single set of ties throughout the entire wreath frame, and I'll meet you back here. All right, friends, now that we've added our curls into every single pipe cleaner tie on our wreath base, just look at the quick transformation we made. What a fantastic base. At this point, this guy is about 24 inches in diameter, so it's going to be a great size wreath, and it's probably every bit of 8 inches thick. Let's just see. About 6 inches thick. So it should fit between a standard door and a screen door. So it's time to move on to the next step. And just to give you an idea of what I'm going to do with my sign, I've actually decided to place mine right in the center of my wreath. You could also place it towards the bottom, off to one side or another, totally up to you. But mine's going to be sitting here once it's time to add that in. So I just wanted to share that with you real quickly. And let's talk about our very next step. So you're going to need some orange Deco Mesh tubing and some black Deco Mesh tubing. These both came from the Dollar Tree. And then you're also going to need a 1.5 inch orange based ribbon and a 1.5 inch black and white buffalo check. Those are both going to match with our sign. Super cute. We're going to place 1 ribbon tail in every single set of pipe cleaners with the exception of 1 on the upper level. So remember, we have 18 sets of ties. We're saving 1 set of ties for a bow. So we need 17 pieces in total of our 1.5 inch ribbon. You can choose which one you have 8 of and which one you have 9 of. I'm going to do 9 of the buffalo check. So let me show you really quickly an easy way to quickly cut some ribbon tails. I want your ribbon tails to be 11 inches in length. So just roll out first ribbon. Guys, I'm sorry for the noise in the background. The neighbor's still doing some yard work. So you're just going to roll out your ribbon. Identify your 11 inch mark and just pinch it with your finger, and then fold your ribbon back and forth accordion style until you have the number of pieces that you need. Once you have the total number of pieces, in my case 9, I chose to do 9 of the black and white buffalo check, trim off the rest of your ribbon. And then you're just going to want to make sure your stack is put together nicely and your ends are marrying. And you can either choose to dovetail your ends or angle trim. I'm going to angle trim. And so I've not even separated them, guys. I'm just going to come down about 1 inch, cut up on the diagonal to give me that angle cut. And then I'm going to flip my stack over. I'm going to make sure those ends are married up nicely. And I'm going to do the exact same thing, just like so. And then once you're done, you've got the total number of tails that you need. They're all equally measured. And when you cut them, you've already trimmed your ends. Easy breezy. So now repeat that same step with your orange ribbon, and I'll meet you back here. Now that our ribbon tails are all cut and trimmed and ready to go, we're going to sit those off to the side and prepare our Deco Mesh pieces. So if you're new to working with Deco Mesh tubing, friends, it's basically 1/4 inch in diameter, and it's really flexible and pliable, but it also squishes out pretty quickly. And so when you're working with Deco Mesh, you don't want to pull on it. You just want to let it lay organically as you're crafting with it, and let it lay as it wants to so that it doesn't flatten out. And we're going to need 8 pieces of one color and 9 pieces of the other color, measured at 21 inches in length. So I'm just going to measure that out, and remember, I'm letting it lay organically and I'm not pulling on it. I'm going to identify that 21-inch mark and cut it off, and then I can use this piece as my measuring piece, and doesn't need to be perfect, friends. Nobody's going to be measuring. So go ahead and cut 8 pieces of one color, 9 pieces of the other at 21 inches in length, and I'll meet you back here. All right, all of my deco mesh pieces are cut and ready to go. Go ahead and bring your wreath base back to your workstation and go ahead and grab a small pair of snips or a good pair of scissors. And now it's time to add our ribbon tails and deco mesh bows into all of our wire ties or pipe cleaner ties on our wreath base. Now remember, we're going to add 1 set of ribbon tail and deco mesh combo to every single set of ties, with the exception of 1 on the upper level. It doesn't matter, you know, which set of ties you reserve for the bow, because at this point we've not added our sign, so there's no top or bottom. Just remember, 1 set of ties on the upper level. Don't add in any tails because we're going to add a bow. And so we've got our solid orange ribbon and then our black and white buffalo check ribbon. And then we've got our black deco mesh tubing and our orange. And so what we're going to do, I always like to start on the lower level. You can start anywhere you'd like. I'm going to grab a single piece of ribbon because we're going to add 1 ribbon tail with 1 piece of deco mesh to every single set of ties. You're going to identify that center point either by eyeballing it, or if you prefer, you can fold it in half and then that line will give you that center point. You're just going to pinch it in the middle so it looks like a men's bow tie. And then you're going to kind of fold it into a loose V over your thumb. You'll come to any set of ties. I'm going to marry the orange ribbon with the black deco mesh tubing, and then I'll marry the orange black deco mesh tubing with the black and white buffalo check ribbon, but you can certainly add them in as you wish. So we folded that into a V. I'm going to lay it down here in my work area. I'm going to grab a piece of my tubing, and remember, we're not going to pull tautly because it will flatten it out. And with my hand, I'm going to take an end of the tubing and just lay it in my hand, pinching it with my thumb, and I'm just going to make a figure 8, just like so. And you want 1 inch to 1.5 inches of tubing left over on each end so that it doesn't come undone. But, you know, again, guys, not looking for perfection. So you can see that my loops are not the same size. It is okay. Now I'm going to add that right on top of my ribbon tail. And I'm going to come to any set of ties on my wreath base. I'm going to add that guy in all the way down to the base of those ties. I'm going to give those ties a couple, 2 or 3 tight twists. Then I'm going to take my snips and trim off the remaining bits of those ties because we aren't going to add anything else into them. You can throw those away. I'll just fluff my tails out, and by fluffing them out, I'm just making sure they're pointing away from the center of the wreath. And I've given them a little curve with my finger. And then I'm just going to leave my deco mesh tube bow as it is and let it lay where it wants to lay. And then we'll move on to the next. So I'm going to go back and forth between the color combinations. So this time I'm grabbing my buffalo check. I'm eyeballing to find the center. I'm pinching in the middle. I'm folding it down over my thumb. This time I'm going to grab my orange deco mesh tubing. I'm going to fold it into a figure 8 and leave a bit of tail on each end. And I'm going to place this guy into the very next set of ties. I'm placing it all the way down to the base of those pipe cleaner ties. I'm going to give them 2 or 3 super tight twists. And then I'm going to grab my snips and trim off the excess bits of those pipe cleaners. Then I'm going to come back in here and just pull my ribbon forward. So run my fingers over them, and move on to the next. So go ahead and add one ribbon tail and one deco mesh tube bow to every single set of ties with the exception of one on your upper level, and I'll meet you back here. All right, now we've added our ribbon tails and our deco mesh tube bows to every single set of ties on our frame with the exception of one on the upper level, and look how stunning this beauty is turning out to be. I cannot wait to see it come together. And so now the next step is to add in our sign. So you're going to want to be mindful and identify the set of ties that you've reserved on the upper level. And depending on where you would like to place your sign into your wreath, you're just going to want to make sure that it's in good coordination with those ties. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm actually going to add mine to the center of my wreath and down just a tad. And so my ties are here in the upper left-hand corner between 10 and 11 on a clock. And so what I'm going to do is take my two zip ties and just give them a couple twists here and add my sign into my frame. And so I'm going to poke these ties through, and I'm going to make sure they're wrapped around at least two of the rings of the wire frame so that they're nice and stable, and then I'll meet you back here. So I've just flipped my wreath over for you so that you could see this, friends, and I'm going to just make sure that that's nice and tight. I'm twisting those pipe cleaners several times. And I always prefer, if it's possible, based on your placement, that at least one set is tied around a crossbar. That just keeps your attachment or your sign from sliding around. And so now I've given each set of ties several tight twists. And now I'm just going to trim off my ends here. And then I'm going to take my fingers and just poke that tie kind of back under so it doesn't scratch my customer's door. And then I like to take my hot glue gun and just put a little dollop of glue right over where that pipe cleaner meets the wire frame, just to help give it some stability and helps to reduce the slide of your sign. We'll give it about a minute here to dry. If you're new to working with hot glue, when you put hot glue on to your attachment, it comes out clear, and as it dries, it turns this milky color, and that's how you can tell when your glue is dry and you can move on to the next step. While that glue is drying, you guys, I have to show you something. I've had several people ask me about this. And I'm kind of late to the game with this, but you know, you've seen me grab a couple drinks here and there throughout my videos if you're not new to my channel. And I recently bought this Hydro Flask water bottle. It comes in a million different sizes and colors, different types of tops. But you know, when I'm talking during my wreath videos, I get frequent drinks. And I just recently purchased this, and this guy stays cold forever. I wish I would have bought one of these eons ago. Basically, I fill this with, I don't know, maybe a half a cup of ice and water. And I usually drink a couple of these a day, and I don't have to replace my ice at all. In fact, the next day, there's still some ice in there. This thing is like magic. Anyway, I've had lots of you ask, so I just wanted to show you what it was. It's a Hydro Flask. I'll leave a link for you below. I actually grabbed it from Amazon, and I love, love, love it. All right, now that our glue is dry, let's flip this beauty back over. Look how stinking cute that is. If you've got any ribbon tails or curls, deco mesh curls or tubing bundles that you wanted to pull out and free from behind your sign, just go ahead and do that now. And here's our reserved set of ties or chenille stems for a bow. And so I'm going to grab some ribbon and we'll make a quick bow to add up into the corner. All right, I'm going to scoop my wreath off to the side so that we can make this quick bow. And I'm going to make a simpler bow, guys, because I think I'm going to add a little bitty buffalo check pumpkin into the center of this. So I've grabbed a buffalo check 2.5-inch wired ribbon and a glittery orange with some black and white trim, 1.5-inch wired ribbon. Just use any coordinating ribbon that you have. Any kind is fine as long as it's wired. And then you'll need a zip tie or a chenille stem or something to secure your bow. And friends, I know that bows are really the toughest part of wreath making when you first start out. It was for me too. So I'm going to move pretty quickly through making this bow, but I will leave a couple of step-by-step slow moving bow making tutorials for you in the description of this video so that you have that if you need to reference it. So work with me here real quickly while I make our bow. All right, I've quickly made my bow here and secured it down with a 6-inch zip tie. Just going to trim off those ends, and I've literally just got 2 loops and 2 tails of each ribbon type here. And we're going to get our wreath back into our work area and add this guy into our chenille stems. Now let me show you a little trick. Sometimes when you add your bows, you need them to be secure, of course, but maybe the chenille stems are recessed really deeply as this is, and you don't want to push your bow all the way down to the base, because then it's going to get lost in your wreath. So what you can do is take your zip tie and create a false bottom by giving it a couple of twists closer towards the surface where you want your ribbon to lay. Now, some people prefer to fluff their bows prior to adding it in. I actually do so after. You can do whatever method is comfortable for you. So I'm just going to lay this guy right on top of those pipe cleaners and give them several tight twists. Normally I would trim off those excess bits, but because they're so short, I'm just going to curl those guys back and out of the way, like so. And now I will fluff out my bow. And then grab your scissors and trim your ends. Again, dovetail or angle, either is fine. How stinking cute. All right, it's time for the last step. So I grabbed a bag of these foam pumpkins from Hobby Lobby. They are just under 2 inches in diameter, and they're foam with cloth covering. And originally I was going to add one to the center of my bow, but I think I've changed my mind. I think I'm going to place 3 around our wreath here. And I'm going to use 3 of the same size of these buffalo check. Just ties really nicely with our sign. And let me show you how we're going to attach them in, friends. So anytime I'm working with florals on any project, if it's got a really sturdy base or stem, wire stem, I keep these guys because they're great to add embellishments into your wreaths. And let me show you what I mean. So I just keep these in a jar on my work area. I'll trim off a stem here, and I always leave it a little bit longer. You can always take more off, but you can't put it back on. Then I'll decide where I want to lay my embellishments. So I think for the purposes of this wreath, we're going to go like so. So a couple of them are at an angle. Then I'll take my snips and just kind of cut a little hole. And I'll poke that piece of stem right down in there. I'll pull it back out and add a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch little bitty bead of hot glue. Just make sure that guy doesn't go anywhere. And I'll poke it back in. And then what you can do is just add that guy right down in there for your embellishment. So I'm going to run about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch bead of glue at the end here. And then I'm going to come over to my wreath and add that guy right down in. And now I know it's not going to go anywhere, and I'm not counting on that mesh alone to hold that fellow in place. I'm going to do the same thing for these next two. All right, friends, this beauty is finished. How stinking cute did this turn out? I will add a picture of this hanging on my door at the end of this video. Please be sure to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed creating with me today. And of course, if you're new here, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. We've got new tutorials uploading every week. Thanks, friends. Happy crafting.